Serverless versus monolithic architectures, an in-depth comparison. Are you confused about which architecture to choose for your next project? Are you trying to decide between serverless and monolithic architectures? If yes, then you have come to the right place. In this video, we will take a deep dive into both serverless and monolithic architectures and compare them based on various factors such as scalability, cost, and maintenance. Introduction. Choosing the right architecture is crucial for the success of any software project. Both serverless and monolithic architectures have their pros and cons, and choosing one over the other depends on various factors such as project requirements, team expertise, and budget. Serverless architecture has gained a lot of popularity in recent years due to its scalability and cost efficiency, while monolithic architecture is still widely used in many applications. In this article, we will explore the differences between these two architectures and help you decide which one is suitable for your next project. What is serverless architecture? Serverless architecture is a cloud-based computing model where the cloud provider manages the infrastructure and automatically allocates resources to run your code. With serverless architecture, you don't have to worry about server management, scaling, or capacity planning, as the cloud provider takes care of everything. In serverless architecture, your application is broken down into small, independent functions that can be executed on demand. These functions are triggered by events such as user requests or data changes, and the cloud provider automatically scales the resources to meet the demand. What is monolithic architecture? Monolithic architecture, on the other hand, is a traditional approach to software development, where the entire application is built as a single, large codebase. In monolithic architecture, all the components of the application, such as the user interface, database, and business logic, are tightly coupled and run on a single server or cluster. Monolithic architecture requires manual scaling and capacity planning, and any changes to the application require a redeployment of the entire codebase. This makes monolithic architecture less flexible and harder to maintain than serverless architecture. Serverless versus monolithic architectures, factors to consider. When deciding between serverless and monolithic architectures, it's essential to consider various factors such as scalability, cost, and maintenance. Let's take a closer look at these factors. Scalability. Scalability is a crucial factor when it comes to choosing an architecture. With serverless architecture, scaling is effortless, as the cloud provider automatically allocates resources to meet the demand. In serverless architecture, you only pay for the resources that you use, which makes it cost-efficient and scalable. On the other hand, monolithic architecture requires manual scaling and capacity planning. Scaling in monolithic architecture can be challenging and often requires additional servers or clusters, which can increase the cost of the infrastructure. Cost. Cost is another critical factor when it comes to choosing an architecture. Serverless architecture is cost-efficient as you only pay for the resources that you use. With serverless architecture, you don't have to worry about server management, scaling, or capacity planning, as the cloud provider takes care of everything. On the other hand, monolithic architecture can be expensive as it requires manual scaling and capacity planning. Monolithic architecture requires additional servers or clusters to scale, which can increase the cost of the infrastructure. Maintenance. Maintenance is another factor that you should consider when choosing an architecture. In serverless architecture, the cloud provider takes care of server management, scaling, and capacity planning, which makes it easier to maintain. With serverless architecture, you don't have to worry about patching or upgrading servers, as the cloud provider takes care of everything. On the other hand, monolithic architecture requires manual server management, patching, and upgrading, which can be time-consuming and costly. With monolithic architecture, any changes to the application require a redeployment of the entire codebase, which can be complicated and time-consuming. Serverless versus monolithic architectures, pros and cons. Both serverless and monolithic architectures have their pros and cons. Let's take a closer look at them. Serverless architecture, pros. Cost efficient. You only pay for the resources that you use, which makes it cost efficient. Scalable, serverless architecture automatically scales resources to meet the demand. Easy to maintain, the cloud provider takes care of server management, scaling, and capacity planning, which makes it easier to maintain. High availability, serverless architecture provides high availability as the cloud provider automatically manages failover and disaster recovery. Serverless architecture, cons. Cold start, serverless functions have a cold start time, which can slow down the response time of your application. Limited control, serverless architecture provides limited control over the underlying infrastructure. Vendor lock-in, serverless architecture can create vendor lock-in, as it's challenging to migrate to another cloud provider. Monolithic architecture, pros. Full control, monolithic architecture provides full control over the underlying infrastructure. Familiarity, monolithic architecture is a familiar approach to software development and is widely used in many applications. Performance, monolithic architecture can provide better performance as all the components of the application run on a single server or cluster. Monolithic architecture, cons. Scalability, monolithic architecture requires manual scaling and capacity planning, which can be challenging and costly. Maintenance, monolithic architecture requires manual server management, patching, and upgrading, which can be time-consuming and costly. Resilience, monolithic architecture is less resilient as all the components of the application are tightly coupled and run on a single server or cluster. Conclusion. Choosing the right architecture is crucial for the success of any software project. Both serverless and monolithic architectures have their pros and cons, and choosing one over the other depends on various factors such as project requirements, team expertise, and budget. Serverless architecture is cost-efficient, scalable, and easy to maintain, but it has some limitations such as cold start time and limited control. On the other hand, monolithic architecture provides full control, familiarity, and better performance, but it requires manual scaling, maintenance, and is less resilient. Ultimately, the choice between serverless and monolithic architectures depends on the specific needs of the project. It's important to evaluate both architectures carefully and choose the one that best fits the project's requirements and budget. In summary, serverless versus monolithic architectures is an ongoing debate in the software development world, and each architecture has its pros and cons. By understanding the differences and evaluating the needs of the project, developers can make an informed decision and choose the best architecture for their application.